I'm Scott Prop and Roll. I got Mark, Poppy, and we're going to talk about iconic props from the 1990s.
The 70s and the 90s, like the two greatest decades of filmmaking, in my opinion. Some people say the 90s were the second 70s. So you might notice that we're in a different space. Look, we have a nice sign, and
Oh.
Isn't it fun? Whether you know or not, we're in Texas, and we usually shoot in a warehouse that has no air conditioning, so it's a little warm. So we've moved into an air-conditioned space. You know, the 90s was another very formative decade for me in terms of these films. I mean, fantastic movies. It's kind of where the independent film scene really got going with people like Quentin Tarantino and Steven Soderbergh and Robert Rodriguez.
I've seen Groundhog Day.
You have?
I have.
Good. Bill Murray, Andy McDowell, Chris Elliott.
Stephen Tobolowsky, I think it might be his literal first film, is Michael Shannon.
And then, of course, the Groundhog.
Yes.
The iconic prop, which you see over and over and over and over again in this movie, is the clock. And it was actually a Panasonic RC6025. They actually had a clock rigged to go from 5:59 to 6, and that's all it did, was 5:59 to 6. So she quickly jump in, hit a button, and it would reset for the next take. So they had to hunt around from to flea markets, to yard sales, thrift stores, and at the time the RC6025 Panasonic was a very common flip clock. But if you try to look on eBay now, good luck. I've been hunting one down, I couldn't find one. So if anyone watching this has an RC6025 they want to get rid of, let me know.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the actual, when that clock came out on the market.
By this time, people were using the LED, I would guess mid-80s. They couldn't find it at retail outlets. They were hunting them down from, like I said, thrift stores, secondhand stores.
You can tell that one's a little different, and that's the one he's gonna crush, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it looks different.
The placement of the light looked different.
Yeah.
Because you had two lights coming down, and I guarantee you that the electric department got in there and they, placed bulbs.
Yeah, because he was gonna crush it. Because you can tell the whole front of it is darker.
I recently found out that Harold Ramis is a practicing Buddhist. And apparently to reach enlightenment, it takes 10,000 years. So in his mind, it was that Bill Murray spent 10,000 years, which that'd drive you crazy. Yeah, that was a little too staged, I think. Look at how it lands on the floor.
Down there.
It's all intricately placed.
They're not destroying the clock. They're throwing it into foam, there's a pillow.
Right, and they're just going to throw up some
Somebody's
pieces.
got, a handful of stuff.
This is prop master Amy McCarthy Wynn's first job to prop master. And
Wow.
I think she did an incredible job. She did have an interesting story. When the movie was released, it kind of pissed her off because on all the billboards, it's Bill Murray's face in the wrong clock.
Oh, right.
It was one of those old-fashioned bell clocks.
Yeah, that's on the poster.
Yeah, well, she first saw it on the billboard, but I believe it's on the poster.
I'm sure it was marketing.
It was marketing department.
But obviously,
Somebody didn't talk to somebody.
yeah, now did they build that?
Yeah, that was...
Yes. No way to do that, like with the practical one tight, as you take the cover off. They're probably like the size of football yard markers.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I wasn't a big fan of the movie. It was just the structure of it, it just was repetitive to me. And it seemed longer than it needed to be. So I'm serious, by the end of the movie, I was like, it's about time.
Now that I know that was just a bit in service of your joke, I'm okay with it. Because if you actually didn't like Groundhog Day, I might have to leave. Because it's classic.
It's a classic.
So next up, we've got one of my favorite movies, Jurassic Park. So the iconic prop from Jurassic Park is, of course, the Barbasol Can. Given to Dennis Nedry by Lewis Dodgson. Dodgson, we got Dodgson here. See, nobody cares. So in the film, the bottom unscrews, much like this one does, but inside there's a cryogenic chamber that can hold up to 15 dinosaur embryos and keeps them cold for 36 hours, up to 36 hours. So in the book, it's a Gillette can. I'm not sure where,
Sense a parent company.
and it still works as regular shaving cream if it needs to be inspected.
So my guess is they switched it out with a real can of Barbasol. Because you notice there's a cut. Because this would be a pain to rig with both.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't find how many they had of these I mean, I'm sure they probably had a few. It's iconic, but it's not heavily featured. You know, you see it in this scene, you see it get buried in mud, you see it when he's getting the embryos.
He came really close to getting caught, and that was a close shave.
And they do have replicas. I found that they're called Paragon effects. They're like $300, $400.
There's levels.
It gets buried in mud, and the writer said that was supposed to be kind of like the gold dust in the wind, and
Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
or you don't know whatever happens to it. But it's brought back in many other things like video games.
What's this?
I think this is the animated.
That Camp Cretaceous or whatever thing on that.
Yes.
So this is him finding it.
And then in the most recent film, Dodgson comes back and is now on display in his case. Now, I haven't seen Dominion, but everything I read about it with regards to this character and the Barbasol Can makes it seem like it was very poorly set up, that you didn't recognize this character.
So are we to assume that someone found that within 36 hours? Because it was only good for, it would only keep it cold for 36 hours.
22 years later, so the embryos wouldn't be viable, but I guess it serves as an Easter egg for the audience. I did find at auction, there's a $25,000, you could bid $25,000 plus for one from the movie.
Now, I want to say my favorite prop from Jurassic Park is not the Barbasol Can, it's the glass of water. When you hear and feel the footsteps of the T-Rex and the way the water moves in the glass of water.
Well, that water, I believe, is never touched. So technically, some prop.
There is a scene.
I guarantee you props had some
There
involvement.
is the scene with
The way they got they tried 1,000 different ways to get that right, like footstep ripple in the water, and they ended up using a guitar.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Wait. A guitar?
A guitar.
Or a guitar.
It's a guitar.
Our next prop is from a great movie called The Usual Suspects. Yeah,
It's one of my favorites. I love it.
it's so good. If you haven't seen Usual Suspects, do yourself a favor. Also, I want to preface my breakdown of this prop by saying that in talking about this prop, I'm spoiling the movie. So if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects, please skip to the next prop so I don't spoil it. Public service announcement over. Okay, so the prop is Agent Coulion's coffee mug, which of course has something written on the bottom. It's not that I just wrote that K. That's a K. So the whole framing device of the movie is a interrogation that Chaz Palminteri does of Kevin Spacey. And in the end of the movie, you basically see Kevin Spacey's been making it up. And you discover at the end, Agent Coulion is like amazed that this has happened. He drops his coffee mug. You see the bottom of the coffee mug and it says Kobashi Porcelain, which was the name of the lawyer of the bad guy that Kevin Spacey kept saying, Kobayashi.
I am Mr. Kobayashi. I have been asked by my employer to bring a proposal.
Kevin Spacey's character gave up no name, so everything was off of printed material in there.
There's actually a shot early on where Palminteri's on the desk, Spacey's in a seat, and the shot is you see the coffee mug as Palminteri's taking a drink, and you see Spacey looking directly at the bottom of the mug. So that's a little...
Right, but you don't make the connection till later.
No, of course not. But when you go back, you're like,
Yeah.
ooh. So the reason I think that the mug is so iconic, it's all visual. It's kind of as you, the audience member, realizes, and he's got his coffee, and he drops the mug like, oh my God, Kobayashi Porcelain. And it's just like the cherry on the sundae. And there's no real Kobayashi porcelain. That's made up for the movie. I never found out for sure, but, you know, Kobayashi probably came from Christopher McQuarrie, the writer, being a Star Trek fan.
Data on Kobayashi Maroon.
Subject vessel is third-class neutronic fuel carrier.
They had a bunch of breakaways that they got, and they had to do it multiple times to get it right. But apparently the one in the shot is a real cup because of the edges you would see were different if it was breakaway. And it's just a stamp, and the prop master was apparently, he didn't know they were gonna get that tight, which, why didn't he see the monitor? But he was nervous that it looked too much like a stamp, although I think it looks fine.
Lost his grip on the situation. Okay. That was definitely not Breakaway because it doesn't break like Breakaway. Breakaway ceramic has got like a wax mixture in it. It just breaks different.
I almost kind of feel like it was real.
It looks real to me because of the shine on it.
And especially that version that comes off the ground in such a big chunk.
Yeah.
Because Breakaway isn't that strong usually. It's annoying on days like this because you're Breakaway, so it's like you shoot it and cut. And then prop set dresser goes in. You got to pick up all the pieces. You got to sweep. You got to mop. You got to dry it. Then you shoot again. And you do it over and
you
over.
got to make sure that the floor doesn't look like you just cleaned.
Yeah, it's just like liquid. There's no sweetener because you can't make it sticky.
Well, that's the other question. We should talk about his coffee. I feel like most seasoned cops they're drinking black coffee. He's definitely got some cream. So I wonder if there's a way that cup could have maybe broken a more repetitive fashion since you have to do it so many times.
Well, you'd have to pre-score it. Or possibly do a magnetic reusable version. Maybe we'll try that in another video. All right, next up is Office Space, the red stapler.
Have you seen my stapler? It's red.
So this was filmed here in Austin, Texas. My good friend Stan Gilbert, Stanford S. Gilbert, he made it. Now at the time, Swingline did not make red staplers. I think it was model 647. I might be wrong on that. Got one that Mike Judge liked the size and shape of, but then they ended up adding Bondo to it and painting it and then moving the swing line on a normal stapler. The swing line logo's on the top. They moved it to the side. Because of this film, the swing line company got over inundated with requests for red staplers because they didn't make one. It took them a few years before they finally made one. And when they did, it didn't really match. So for the 20th anniversary, they made this collector's edition that is modeled after one of the real ones. Now, the real staplers, there were like 8 of them that Stan made. Mike Judge ended up with 2. And as you know, the stapler got burned. So Stan had to torch one.
Yeah.
So Mike Judge got a torched version and an untorched version. Stephen Root, who played Milton, signed this stapler. And as you see, it says, he wrote on it, "Have you seen my stapler?"
So Scott, would you say this is one of your prized possessions?
Well, I am quite attached to it. It's a staple item in my collection.
Oh, that joke was easy.
That Office Space and the character of Milton was all inspired by one of Mike Judge's very first animated shorts. Oh, there you go.
They even called it Office Space.
There you go.
You got nailed the glasses too, huh?
We're here. Let me just go ahead and get that from you. Thanks.
All right, so my next one is the putter from Happy Gilmore.
Whoa, here it comes.
Here it comes. Perry Blake was the co-production designer, and according to them, it was a complete fabrication. Here we have a regular putter. Adam Sandler's character was a hockey player that became a golfer because of his amazing ability to drive. So he was winning some tournaments early on, but wasn't very good and needed to learn how to putt to really challenge Shooter McGavin. Yeah.
Chris McDonald.
Chris McDonald.
McDonald's.
I got to work with him on We Can Be Heroes.
He was. Was he the president?
Yeah. He learns how to putt using this hockey stick putter, end of a hockey stick here that, as you can tell, it's not as curved, but it's flattened out like a putter. Adam Sandler is also always very involved in his movies, so he tried it out. Dennis Dugan, the director, they would work together and found the one they liked. I couldn't find a count on how many they made, but I'm sure they had a few of them, especially since they're fabricating them themselves.
I doubt it was made out of wood, but I could be wrong.
It could have been.
No, I think it was. The base of it, I think, was.
It was?
Probably because they figured it would be too heavy if you made it solid metal.
Yeah. Okay.
The big trick with making wood look like metal is the fact that it's really hard to replicate metal.
I mean, it's probably wood because wood's got more give, so it's going to break.
The resin would crack.
It's hard to tell whether or not it was a full fabrication job or if they would take pieces of like a pre-existing putter and added the hockey stick. It's certainly a cool thing, and yeah, it's certainly something that doesn't exist. It's why I grew up playing hockey, and I love Adam Sandler. So this was a big part of my childhood was this movie. In hockey, you tape your stick. And now they're so different. This definitely has wood with like a fiberglass wrapping, and then you put the hockey tape, the puck tape on.
Yeah. Well, Carl Weathers makes it, right?
Yeah, he makes sure had it made for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he has his hand, you know, too. So it's like he probably knows some people that do stuff.
Next, we have Edward Scissorhands, and the Scissorhands are our prop. This is a Tim Burton film from somewhere in the 90s, 91 or something. It's a fantastic movie. It's like a classic. Johnny Depp changed his career. Prior to this, you know, he had been doing more like 21 Jump Street, and this movie really kind of showed him to be an actor. And the whole story is based off a drawing that Tim Burton did when he was a kid. He was an artist as a child, and he had drawn Edward. It weren't scissors. It was like long, like kind of blades or something for hands. You know, he kind of worked with a writer who wrote it, and Caroline Thompson. Thinking about how they were going to do this, they approached the amazing Stan Winston, who did Jurassic Park. It was really Winston's idea, apparently, to incorporate like literal scissors. So when Stan Winston was designing it, the idea was that each finger is its own kind of pair of scissors. So they're all kind of different, almost like each one's from a different pair. They are not made of metal. They were cast, then made out of resin, and then they were vacuum metallicized with aluminum to give the metal appearance. Obviously, they didn't want to put real sharp metal blades on his hands.
From a prop person standpoint, I'm imagining it was quite a job of whoever was having to like throw the clippings and the hair, the dog hair and the human hair that's flying around. They had to devise a system, but look at it. It's all pretty uniform in the way it's flipping up, you know?
Yeah.
That they just put loose hair on it and he just knocked it off
moving
on the dog.
Right. There was a real pair made, or maybe even two. There were insert pairs that were run by puppeteers that could actually cut things. And I mean, that's, you know, just a special effects field day. I'm sure they were just little valves. The sheet was already cut, I'm sure. Some kind of layer of foam that he could poke, but if you do it like frame by frame, I bet the pokes don't even match quite where the water comes out of.
Yeah.
Stan Winston had two, and then either Johnny Depp or Tim Burton had one, and one was in a private collection, but they do come up for auction, it seems, from time to time, and they're generally been valued like $20,000 to start, I think. There's multiple scenes where he like scratches people and stuff. You know, it's a pretty easy to see effect. They literally just put a little blood or something on it.
My guess is there was a representative from Stan Winston's studio that probably was in charge, and no one touched things.
Yeah, sometimes because this thing was probably somewhat delicate. You're right. It was
maybe the prop department handled the stunt pair or the whatever the double was wearing.
The Edward robot, if you notice, is cutting celery, which I always thought was kind of weird. And then, you know, you have Vincent Price. He plays the inventor that creates Edward. Apparently, besides making cookies, he also manufactures something to do with celery. Just not sure what.
So we got another Bill Murray movie here. This is the Big Earn bowling ball from the movie Kingpin.
When they were scouting locations for the film, they went into a Pittsburgh bowling alley and found a pro shop.
There was a single bowling ball made out of clear resin with a rose in the middle. And Peter was like, yeah, we got to get that. That's perfect for Big Earn. They only had one of them. And when they shot the sequence of him where he's supposed to hit 3 strikes in a row, he actually hit 3 strikes in a row. So when the crowd's screaming and hollering, it's because he just did an amazing thing. I mean, they just kept rolling with it. Being able to do what he did in that scene, you know, it was obviously a striking success.
Spared no expense.
Hey man, stay in your lane. It has since, it stayed in a Boston bowling alley for like 30 years. And I'm not sure if the alley just decided, well, they just wanted to get the money from it, whatnot. It just went up for auction like in the last couple months, and it sold for $350,000.
It's amazing to me that they didn't get another one made.
Yeah, I agree.
That's uncommon. I mean,
I don't know,
but hey.
But from all accounts of what I've read, there was just one, which is why it sold for $350,000. Now, if you get online, you can find replicas. They're making replicas now that are around $125.
So did they just get lucky that it fit his hand?
Well, they probably drilled the holes out. I'm sure they.
Okay, so there's a
they
modification.
yeah. And most of those old bowling alleys, because I've worked some movies where we're in some old bowling alleys on the East Coast, and a lot of them have the drills in the back in the area where the pin resetters are.
And it reminds me of a movie that came out very close to this movie called Mystery Men, where Janine Garofalo plays a character that has a acrylic or clear bowling ball that's got a skull in it.
It's got a skull inside it.
Yeah. With Janine Garofalo's ball from Mystery Men and Bill Murray's ball, if they got them together, make a nice Guns N' Roses bowling extravaganza.
His joke was in the gutter.
How would Edward Scissorhands do with a bowling ball?
That would be challenging.
Go ahead, smile. It's funny.
So my last iconic prop of the 1990s is the board game from the movie Jumanji. The namesake of the film itself, crude replica here.
So is this like a mass market game that they came out with?
This is a newer version. I think it might have some audio. Oh, there it is.
Have you ever played this game, Timmy?
No, I haven't.
We should play it later.
I wonder if you'd get bored.
So tell us all about it, Mr. Pops.
So Joe Johnston directed this. They had made multiple of these games and boards. They had at least two of the hero games made, but they were very heavy. But those were mostly for the inserts, and those were all made out of wood. They molded a bunch of them that could be used to be carried around, so to be light on the weight, but those didn't open. And then they had multiple stunts were used in them, so they would, they used rubber ones for that. I think one of the hero ones had taken the back plate had been taken out, so the pieces would be magnetized for things like setting up the board game and how they move once you roll the dice. I actually haven't seen any of the newer ones.
Yeah, I don't
Because they're in the game, right?
They're in a video game.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing you notice about those movies from the 90s is they incorporate the practical effects very well.
It was on that cusp of practical effects and computer generated effects.
But if you're immersing yourself in the film, you don't necessarily
Yeah.
clue into all that. And it's done very, very well.
It is interesting. You go back to this stuff, and I love seeing the old practical stuff.
Pulling on them, they're stuck to the board.
Oh, yeah, they just drilled them in, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, or
Yeah,
he's just acting.
Well, I'm sure they stuck him down
Yeah,
so
they
he
probably
could act better.
They probably did, because he's a kid. They probably just drilled him in. And I mean, this is based off a book, is it? Like a kid's book originally?
Yes.
Obviously, there was a guide to do it, but I'm sure whoever got to design the game, that was a lot of fun. Sure, a little stressful too, but as long as you had enough prep time, that's kind of a fun gig to kind of like make the little figures and figure out how it all works. And Joe Johnston, who's been in our previous video, because he was a big part of Lucasfilm. He worked on all the Star Wars movies. Before he became a director, he was an effects guy. He did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids prior to this. And then he went on to do like the first Captain America and Jurassic Park 3, unfortunately.
Should we give him a pass on that one?
Well, I mean...
Alan.
Okay, so our next prop is something special to me. It's from Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and it is the gold watch. I hid this uncomfortable Uncle Metal of my 2 years, and then I was released to my family, and now, little man, I give the watch to you. Christopher Walken, of course, doing the gold watch monologue from Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is broken into 3 segments, and each one has a title, like a separate story. And the middle segment that features the gold watch is called The Gold Watch. So the story is that they needed it to look old, because obviously it's supposed to be, 80 some odd years old. And Jonathan Hodges, I believe, the property master, found something that he showed to Tarantino and he liked. And the interesting thing about it was that most of the time with watches, the way the bands attach, there's these little spring-loaded bars. That's something that, as prop people, we have to deal with a lot, changing out bands or watches breaking. Usually, as you can see, you have these 2 prongs and the bar would go between them. Well, in the watch that the property master found, I think in just like a pawn shop, there was actually like a bracket that was like soldered on. So it created these little bar things that were like, it was just attached. It's a very uncommon situation, kind of a one of a kind. And Tarantino liked it, so that's what they used. The band that they got for the present day sequences, I think it was a springy.
Yeah, the Speedle or Spidle is a very well known band brand.
There you go. So they found one of those, and apparently Bruce Willis at the time was a big watch guy, so he was kind of involved in that choice. They don't know for sure. They think Tarantino has it when these guys have talked about it.
You know, you say Bruce was kind of a watch guy, which makes sense because I worked with Bruce. I went to his trailer with watches, and he was not impressed with anything I had.
Jared,
And I had some nicer ones in the collection.
watches are so rarely seen in close-up. You can buy affordable watches that look expensive, but that aren't. And if there was an insert and it was supposed to be a nice watch, we would get a nice watch. You know, this is worth getting on YouTube and just searching for this monologue to watch Walken do this. It's like a 3.5, 4-minute monologue. Looks straight in the camera and does this monologue. He steals the movie in a lot of ways. Only scene he's in. So you should definitely check it out.
So we should watch it?
Yeah, you should watch it.
If you have the time.
Ah! Well, I think that went well. We weren't playing games. We didn't get creamed.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly.
This video is my cup of tea, but if you do any more puns, I'm gonna clock you.
Come on, the puns are what hold it all together.
Really, you should watch this show.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.
All right, let's split.
Yeah, cut there.
There.